I don't believe that video games today are hitting their full potential. If you go back to 1985, Super Mario Brothers was released. This is a fantastic game. Everybody loved it. It kind of, for me, it started out my video game career. I loved that game. I had to wait like 3 years for my parents to save up enough money to buy it, but I loved it. But at that time, we didn't have the internet. So when Super Mario Brothers 2 comes out, you have to go to the store and buy Super Mario Brothers 2. Now that game was trash anyway, so that was good that I didn't get it anyway. But we have something available to us now that is so powerful. And that's the ability to update your game. Update games, release updates as frequently as possible, and then you can potentially create a brand new experience for your users. Obviously, Minecraft is very near and dear to my heart, but I think it's a perfect example of this. And I think they're the ones that kind of set the bar. They had several ingredients that made it like the perfect storm for a video game. And whether you love him or hate him, judging by, how he is on Twitter now these days, Notch, I think, was the driving force behind how this game became so popular. First of all, very smart guy. He knew the whole coding thing. I've never made a video game in my entire life. I've made games within games, but I've never actually from scratch got into the code ones and zeros and made a game. If you're able to do that, you're some form of genius. He was also extremely passionate about what he was doing. It was very obvious. You could see it through everything that he did, that he was extremely passionate about the work that he was doing. And on top of that, he was an extremely hard worker. And a lot of times, passion and hard work go together. And when they do go together, they can create something that's very wonderful. When Notch first put the game out, he launched a game that he thought, okay, this has potential, this could be good. And there's a small cult following that was like, okay, this does have potential, this could be fun. Not graphically pleasing, which is where everything was kind of headed at the time, but a fun, interesting idea. From there, he did updates weekly. Every week there was an update, a secret update. So he was adding new things to the game every single week. That's such a very powerful tool to keep your audience excited about what you're doing. Now, nobody can really keep up a weekly update, right? I mean, doing weekly updates all by yourself is pretty crazy. So that slowed down, but the amount of content that was brought in the updates had increased. There was a lot more. When an update came, it was a very big deal. There was a lot added with it. And that trend continued for about 3 years. From 2010 to 2013, Minecraft had 86 updates. And that's just what I've been able to collect and count. Feel free to do your own research on that. But from 2013 to 2017, up to today, there's been 27 updates. Coincidentally, in 2014, around when all this went down, when the updates kind of slowed down, Microsoft purchased Mojang. Now you can say, okay, the updates slowed down because you have a more fully fleshed out game. But it's a game with kind of endless possibilities. And I think any game is like that. And that's where we're headed with this. But as the updates slow down, you see search trends and traffic slow down. And people stop playing and people stop watching. And it kind of just slowly doesn't really plateau. It just kind of dies off. Dies off is a bad word for it, but you know what I mean. Now let's take a game that I love so very dearly, the game Cube World. Now, if you don't know Cube World, it's a game that was released in July of 2013, and it was something that I was very excited about. It was extremely hyped and extremely successful. So successful when it started out that Minecraft diehards were DDoSing the Cube World website so that people couldn't download it because they thought, oh, it's a pixel game. It's a pixelized game. It's a ripoff of Minecraft, which everybody soon found out it wasn't even close. It was a totally different game. I think that game had a limitless potential. But here we are now almost 4 years later. Hardly any Twitter activity from the main developer, and the site is shut down. You can't purchase the game anymore. And a lot of people have written this guy off as a money grubber, somebody that just pushed a game out, took all the money, and said that's it. After 4 years with 0 updates, you really turn off your audience and you lose any hype that you had. Now people aren't excited about it anymore. A recent great example, in my opinion, is Ark: Survival Evolved. It's a game that came out, and I know it's similar to some other games that have been out there, but it took a really cool, unique idea, and it came out with a lot of excitement and a lot of hype. These guys push out updates constantly. If you look at the Twitter feed for Ark and some of their developers, they're daily tweeting about stuff from their community, about potential updates coming, potential things that they're going to be adding to the game. It's nonstop. And the interesting thing about this, although on YouTube, if you check out the YouTube search trends, it has kind of died off a little bit because people get the idea of the game and they aren't watching as much. But if you look at just the straight Google search trend, January 2017, last month, was the highest search trend for Ark Survival Evolved since it's been released, which is very surprising. It's very evident to me that them being consistent and passionate with their updates, continuing to come out with new and cool ideas, has kept this game not only on the map, but it's kept it growing. Now, I'm not making this video as like, here is the Bible. This is exactly how it is. You have to believe me. I'm definitely up for debate. And if you don't agree with some of the stuff that I'm saying, please, in the comments, let me know. I'd be happy to have a discussion with you. Because this is just what my brain hole has been telling me. I want to talk about the good and the bad. There's pros and cons to having this ability to update your game frequently, all the time. I think number one, you're able to really build a stronger community. People are more interested in your company. They're more interested in your game because they want to see what's new, what's next. It keeps the hype alive. It keeps the excitement alive, especially if they're not having to wait a whole year or a whole 2 or 3 years for your next game to come out. That's just a reskin of this one, or just has a couple other changes and they got to rebuy it. Now that excitement that they have can turn into something that's monthly or even weekly, as Minecraft had proven. You take something like the game of basketball, you look at how it has evolved through the years. There was no three-point line when the game of basketball started, and there were a lot of other rules that were added as time went on, but I don't even think you were allowed to dunk the ball when it first came out. Maybe you were, but I don't think so. With no three-point line. As years go on, they add a three-point line. They add some different offensive goaltending rules. They've recently changed what illegal defense is in the league. So that actual real-life game of basketball is constantly evolving and receiving updates. And their goal is to make the game more interesting. They've even, as of late, talked about adding a 4-point shot, because you have somebody like Steph Curry in the NBA who's shooting from half court easily. So let's reward him for that. Whether I think that's a good idea or not, we won't even go into, but it's their way of keeping the game fresh. There are thousands of different card games out there in the world. Thousands. By the way, that deck of cards, that's a picture of me. I was a little heavier. That was right before we had my first daughter, Ari, so I gained a little sympathy weight. But let's say we're playing 5-card draw poker, and they're dealing them out, and you get an ace, and another ace, and another ace, and another ace, and then a 2. Now, 5 aces would wipe the floor with anybody, but there aren't 5 aces in a deck, so it's impossible. But let's say you change the game up, where you add jokers to the deck. And you say that a joker is a wild card and you could make it whatever you want. All of a sudden now you have 5 aces. The game has become more exciting and more interesting. This last thing that I consider a pro, but some people may disagree with. I think it takes a very moral person and a very moral company to make this a pro. But that's kind of the ability to hold back on features, or at least not necessarily hold back, but if you have ideas and you don't have the time to implement them, you could still put them into the game later. Let's say you have a release date of September and you've got the game together and you have this really great idea, but you can't get it done in time. Well, good news, you can release an update in October or November. That's a great way to add hype for everybody. I've always thought a good example of this was Steve Jobs and Apple. I think that through the years, they found a way to release something like an iPhone, right? And you have the technology to do certain things, but you almost hold back a little bit. Now, I know people turned on them a little bit because for removing the headphone jack and whatnot. Steve Jobs wasn't there to stop that. But when he was there, I think they did a great job of almost keeping some features for phones down the road. Because now down the road, you have the ability to add something new. You have this idea, but let's push it for the next one. Let's hold that off for our next update of the phone. A terrible example of this, where I think that it was done, where people got done a little bit wrong, was No Man's Sky. The game was released. A lot of people hated it. And then they went silent. Radio silent for a very long time. No talk of updates or anything like that. And then months and months later, they add building into the game, the ability to build into the game. But there's a lot of other features that they promised that never came. I think that that's the extreme example, and that's where having the ability to do updates to your game is a negative. That's where you almost are able to slack off. You slack off because, hey, after we release it, we could push an update to fix this and fix this and fix this. And then it starts to create sloppy coding where you get all these bugs and you're not so worried about, if there's a bug, we'll just fix it later. But that's not a good way to go about it. That's where we kind of get into the cons. And this is now speaking from a developer's point of view. If you release a game and then add updates, boom, 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 boom. Take a game like NBA 2K or Madden, okay? If you only did updates, you would be in pretty big trouble because they're very reliant on getting that money for the new game every single year. That's very, very important. And if you're not able to do that now it's really hurting your company. I mean, they could very easily, a lot of these companies could very easily just push out, not very easily, I'm sure it would be a big process, but you just push out an update for the game that you have. You look at like Counter-Strike, it's evolved a lot through the years. But Counter-Strike, as another example, has found a way to monetize what they have. Okay, we're pushing out updates. They're free updates. The game's improving. The game is changing. But if you want these certain features, this knife with this skin, or this gun with this skin, you're going to have to spend money on crates and other stuff like that. And that's where I think it starts to get very creative, because now you're using other ways, you're finding other ways outside the box to monetize your platform that people still really like. I've just had such a struggle lately finding really good quality games that I can really get invested in and stay invested in for a very long time. And I just wish developers would kind of take advantage of that tool of being able to constantly improve the game that they have, not just through bug fixes, but with just little features here and there. Start out with a great product, something that people are very excited about and that people are going to love. Second of all, stay in touch with your community. Twitter is a great way to do that. YouTube is a great way to do that. There's a lot of social media outlets now for developers to stay in touch with the fans, the people that are really anxious to see, hey, what's going on? Is there going to be something new? And then update as often as possible. I think as long as you're passionate, as long as you have a strong passion for what you're doing, I think the whole updating thing comes a lot easier. But you look again at Minecraft, they bring in different developers, bring in different guys onto the team. You take Dinnerbone, for example, from a couple years ago, and when he got there, you knew that he was passionate and on fire for what he was doing. And that breathed a whole new breath of life into the game, in my opinion. Ultimately, what I think we're talking about here is playability. How long can you potentially play a game? And in my experience and from the way I feel, if you can keep the game fresh, even with just little updates as frequently as possible, that's how you win an audience over, or at least that's how you win me over. What I'd like to know is, do you agree with that? And if not, what wins you over? What makes a great game for you? Because I think there are a lot of young future developers out there, and if they don't find my advice helpful, they might find some of your advice in the comment section helpful. So anyway, thank you so much for watching. Love you to death. Leave so many likes, okay? Because it'll really, I don't know what it's gonna do. Who knows with this YouTube game anymore?